To form segments, we need to run cluster analysis. Cluster analysis uses a set of mathematical techniques to discover a structure or groupings within a complex body of data, such as the segmentation-based data matrix. To understand the process of segmentation, think about a deck of cards. Each card differs from the other cards along 3 dimensions or variables: suit, color, and number. To partition a pack of cards into 2 distinct groups, you might sort them into red and black or numbered and picture cards. If you must sort them into 3 groups, it is not intuitively obvious what the segmentation criteria might be. But a 4-group solution is again easy, just sort them into suits. Although you might partition a pack of cards intuitively, partitioning a large number of items into groups can be very complex, especially if those items vary along many different dimensions. Consider partitioning 25 items or respondents into 2 groups, with at least 1 item in a group. There are 16,777,215 possible partitions, or market segments. In partitioning 25 items into 5 groups, the number of possibilities grows to 2,436,684,974,110,751 possible partitions. Clearly, only a systematic and feasible method can find the best partition. Cluster analysis, also known as numerical taxonomy or partitioning, represents a set of statistical techniques developed to address this problem. The input to cluster analysis is the set of distances or measures of association discussed previously. There are 2 basic classes of clustering methods: hierarchical methods and k-means. Hierarchical clustering, as the name suggests, is an algorithm that builds hierarchy of clusters. In hierarchical clustering, we don't keep any assumption on the number of clusters. This algorithm starts with all the data points assigned to a cluster of their own. Then 2 nearest clusters are merged into the same cluster. In the end, this algorithm terminates when there is only a single cluster left. The results of hierarchical clustering usually are presented using dendrogram. Let's take a look at how to read the dendrogram. A dendrogram is a diagram that shows the hierarchical relationship between objects. The main use of a dendrogram is to work out the best way to allocate objects to clusters. The dendrogram shows the hierarchical clustering of 6 observations shown on the scatterplot to the left. The key to interpreting a dendrogram is to focus on the height at which any 2 objects are joined together. In this example, we can see that E and F are most similar, as the height of the link that joins them together is the smallest. The next 2 most similar objects are A and B. In the dendrogram, the height of the dendrogram indicates the order in which the clusters were joined. A more informative dendrogram can be created where the heights reflect the distance between the clusters as is shown. In this case, the dendrogram shows us that the big difference between clusters is between the cluster of A and B versus that of C, D, E, and F. The best choice of the number of clusters is the number of vertical lines in the dendrogram cut by a horizontal line that can traverse the maximum distance vertically without intersecting a cluster. Observations that are joined together below the line are in clusters. In the example below, we have 2 clusters. One cluster combines A and B, and a second cluster combining C, D, E, and F. Now let's take a look at another example. Please pause the video and think about the number of clusters suggested. The right answer is 4. Did you get it right? The dendrogram represents the group process of observations into clusters. The chart reads from bottom to top. At the bottom, all initial observations are separated. At the top, all observations are clustered into one unique segment. The height represents the distance between the 2 groups of observations being merged at each step. If 2 very distant groups are being merged, this will create a jump in the dendrogram, indicating that it might be wise to stop the clustering process before. When reviewing a dendrogram, look for significant distances or jumps in the distances, using the scale on the y-axis. For example, this example contains a very large jump when moving from 4 to 3 clusters. Grouping these 4 clusters into 3 generates a significant loss of information. In other words, it results in grouping within the same cluster customers who are very dissimilar. Draw a horizontal line through the dendrogram for vertical lines cut by this horizontal line. As such, The dendrogram suggests us 4 clusters. K-means is an iterative clustering algorithm that aims to find local maxima in each iteration. This algorithm works in these 5 steps. In step 1, we need to specify the desired number of clusters, k. Let us choose k equals 2 for these 5 data points in 2D space. In step 2, the algorithm randomly assigns each data point to a cluster. Let's assign 3 points in cluster 1 shown using red color and 2 points in cluster 2 shown using gray color. In step 3, cluster centroids or means are computed. The centroid of data points in the red cluster is shown using red cross and those in gray cluster using gray cross. In step 4, each point is reassigned to the closest cluster centroid. Note that only the data point at the bottom is assigned to the red cluster even though it's closer to the centroid of gray cluster. Thus, we assign that data point into gray cluster. In step 5, recompute cluster centroids. Now, recomputing the centroids for both the clusters. The algorithm repeats steps 4 and 5 until no improvements are possible. Similarly, we'll repeat the 4th and 5th steps until we'll reach global optima. When there will be no further switching of data points between 2 clusters for 2 successive repeats. It will mark the termination of the algorithm if not explicitly mentioned.